kind of let the sticker price shock you because you want to go through the entire financial aid process to figure out what your end cost is going to be. So just some important things to know. I'm sure, obviously, this is our third session time, so I'm sure you've been in other sessions where you've heard we are a smaller size school. There is a lot of personal attention at Arcadia. Once the student is admitted to Arcadia, every admitted student, when you do get your aid information, is assigned a personal financial aid counselor based on your alphabet breakdown of your last name. I work with a portion of the alphabet. There are 2 other undergrad counselors. We have grad counselors. So you will have a personal financial aid counselor who's going to be there for you throughout the process. Being a small school, I have connected with a lot of my families, a lot of my students over the years. You'll get our direct number, you'll get my email if I'm your counselor. If you have questions, you are able to call us, you are able to email us with those questions. I always make a joke, I have a couple parents over the years who have other students, they'll call me for their Arcadia student, and then they'll be like, by the way, my other student goes to a much larger school, and I got a phone tree there. Can I just ask you these questions? And I'm like, well, no, because I don't work there, and I'm very sorry that you got a phone tree, but it is nice to know that you do have that person here to be able to help you and walk you through the process. To that end, we do offer a wide variety of counseling opportunities for current and prospective students. Oftentimes, I will have current students who will email me, say like, hey, can we set up an in-person meeting? With Zoom now being very kind of across the board and available to many people, I've been Zooming with a lot of prospective student and families, like admitted students, because maybe they are from a little bit of a distance away, maybe driving all the way to campus for like a 15-minute meeting isn't really helpful for them, but we are able to Zoom and do different things. Many people these days are not into phone calls, which is totally fine, but we're always happy to do a phone call, email as well, so we are available in a variety of ways for students to be able to connect with us and families as well. Once the students get to Arcadia, we do also offer a financial literacy program, our Common Sense program. We actually did a couple workshops. I think we did about 7 to 8 workshops this past year. We've done like a couple in the fall, a couple in the spring. These are about topics that maybe when you're in the lovely bubble of college that you might not necessarily want to think about. I know I always say I was like the worst example. I knew when I was in college, oh, I want food. I go to the dining hall and I swipe my card and I get the food. In the real world, when you want food, you swipe your card, but that money's coming out of your bank account. So the financial literacy component is really something that we really want to work with students. And we actually have been able to collaborate with a couple different offices on campus. Our last workshop was about budgeting when students study abroad. We do hope to have one in April that we're collaborating with the Office of Career Education on about kind of like leveraging job offers. And I'm like the worst poster child for like misinformation when you're in college. I thought you just graduated and got a diploma and got like a really great paying job. Obviously, entry-level jobs, entry-level salaries, so having that kind of resource available is really helpful for our students. So just some basics about financial aid. Financial aid is a very broad term. Financial aid includes many things under the financial aid umbrella. So included under the term of financial aid are scholarships and grants, which are free money, but also loans and student employment. So when we talk about financial aid, we're talking about all of these things coming together to help the student with the cost of their education. So now as far as financial aid goes, there are 2 kinds of financial aid. There is merit-based financial aid and there is need-based financial aid. Merit-based financial aid is your scholarship. So merit-based financial aid is awarded during the admissions process. Now for those of you who are juniors, which is everyone, the common application opens on August 1st. We typically will start reviewing students for admission to the university in mid to late September. We want to give your guidance offices time for everybody to get back, get all the information. When we start reviewing, we are rolling admission. So once we have everything needed to review for admission, we will do so. When you get your admissions decision, you will get a letter that will say, congratulations, you've been admitted to the university. And in that letter, it will say you have been awarded a scholarship for X amount of dollars. Financial aid, in the financial aid office, we are not awarding this. This is going through the admissions process. Because that is a merit award, it is strictly based on the information that you provided when you applied. We do not look at your family's financial information. We do not look at any of that. We look at your transcript. We look at your SAT or ACT scores if you send them. We are test optional. We look at your resume. We look at your recommendations. That all goes into that award. Now, because of that, that is renewable each year automatically as long as you remain a full-time student in good standing at Arcadia. Need-based aid is the second part of it. So you could get a scholarship letter, you can get your acceptance letter fairly early during senior year, and we'll get people who will say, oh, I got my financial aid information. That is not your financial aid information, that is just your scholarship information. Both of these is your financial aid overall picture. Need-based financial aid is the second part of it. This is financial aid that is based off of your family's financial information. So this is the aid that when you apply for financial aid, this is when we're looking at all of that information. Because this is based on family's financial information, it is reevaluated each year. You do reapply each year for that. That is to your benefit. I have done these presentations for many years. I did not expect a global pandemic. I always used to joke around about like, oh, every so often families have changes in income. These days, it's every so often families don't have changes in income. So it is to your benefit to have that reevaluated each year. Need-based aid can include grants, it can include loans, and it can include student employment in the form of work study. So how do you get need-based aid? You file a FAFSA. Has anybody in here ever filed a FAFSA? Can you raise your hand? They all lived. Everyone look at them. They've all survived. I think the FAFSA gets a bad rap, so please do not be scared of the FAFSA. FAFSA is an acronym. Please also know that the first F in FAFSA stands for free. So if you are on a website that is asking you to pay like $80 to file your FAFSA, it's probably not a scam. They will still file it for you, but you're paying somebody to do something that you could do for free. So please, if you want to pay somebody, if you want to use a consultant to file your FAFSA, totally up to you. But it is a free application and they have pretty good customer service and we're here to help. Schools are able to help, so definitely something that you do want to try. As far as the FAFSA goes, it is the application for federal aid as well as state aid, and at Arcadia, it is also the application for need-based aid through Arcadia. A lot of colleges do use it for that, so you do want to make sure that you're filing that FAFSA. You do file one FAFSA per year for each student. So if you have multiple students attending college at the same time, each student does need their own FAFSA, but students, you can list up to 10 schools on your FAFSA. So you file one FAFSA, list 10 schools on there, very similar to the SATs, the information just gets sent to whatever school you put on the FAFSA. Now, if you are applying to more than 10 schools, God bless you and God bless your family for going through that process. A lot of times we'll get calls from students and they'll say, oh my gosh, I put my schools on there in alphabetical order, I have to take some off, what does that mean? It does not mean that if you put Arcadia on there and then you take us off, that your record disappears from my computer screen. It is still there. So basically what you do is you file the FAFSA with your first 10 schools, you go back in and you make a correction, update it, switch schools out, and then the next 10, gosh, if you're applying 20 schools, God bless you, they would get the FAFSA. As far as the FAFSA goes, it does look at parent and student information. Please, 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 when you're filing the FAFSA, please make sure you know what section you are in and who they are asking about. You would be shocked at the number of high school seniors that we get who are making six-figure salaries and are filing their taxes as married, filing jointly. So please make sure that when you are in the student section, you are answering student questions for the student, and in the parent section, you are answering them for the parent. Now, will the FAFSA let you submit if you make a mistake like that? Yes. Being a small school, we do review every FAFSA that we do receive. So when we are reviewing students for aid, we will catch that and we will reach out and say like, hey, the parent and the student information kind of matches, just checking. It will be, you'll just go in and update it, but it does delay your process a little bit. So you do want to make sure, obviously, that you're doing the right thing the first time so you're not being delayed. For those of you who have previously filed a FAFSA, the FAFSA has always been available October 1st of the student's senior year. Now we are going to talk on another slide. The government, I swear it gets bored every so many years and just like changes things up. They are in the process of what's called the FAFSA Simplification Act. So they are simplifying the FAFSA, but simplifying the FAFSA has now delayed. The fall of 2024 FAFSA is expected to come out in December. Now I'm assuming once they figure this all out, this will probably be an outlier year and then they'll go back to the October 1st kind of timeline, but just so everybody's aware, more likely than not, next year's FAFSA will not be coming out until December. So as far as why you should file the FAFSA, first of all, as I said, it's free. It's not bothering anybody. It's not costing you anything. My boss loves this little line here. She created this little tagline herself, KNOW before you say NO. So no before you say no. I've talked to a lot of families and they'll say, oh, I went to a financial aid session at the high school. They told us we make too much money. I don't feel like doing it. The thing is, as an incoming student, especially at a private institution, you don't know what you're saying no to. So even just your first year, do it. See what you qualify for, because again, you don't know. If you want to be considered for any grants from Arcadia, you do have to file a FAFSA each year. So again, that is free money that you could be leaving on the table. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. It's really not as hard as it seems. Each little section has little bubbles where like it'll say, look at this line on your taxes. I went to school many, many years ago, and I always laugh because my parents used to make it a family event where my mom was at the computer, my dad was over here with the tax return. They were yelling lines at each other, and each student had to sit and just watch them do it because we all had to be a part of it because it was my FAFSA. So please, it is not as complicated as people make it sound. So with the FAFSA Simplification Act, there are some changes. They are going to kind of use fewer questions, which is a good thing. They are also renaming some things, so if you've never filed a FAFSA, this really doesn't matter to you because you didn't know what they were named to begin with, so they're just going to have different names. If you have previously filed a FAFSA, the most important renaming is the expected family contribution, which is currently the end result of the FAFSA, which I personally think is the most horribly named thing ever, is actually being renamed to the Student Aid Index. So basically the expected family contribution, when people got that, it was a number. And many people thought, oh, this is what I'm expected to pay out of pocket. That's actually not what it was, and that's not what it is or how it's used. So that is why they are now calling it the Student Aid Index. So basically what happens is when you file your FAFSA, you will get a Student Aid Index. That number is basically used as a guide, which is what the EFC is currently used for, to determine what you qualify for. So it's basically when you go to the amusement park and they have those signs that say you must be this tall to ride, that's basically what it is. It's to say this is a measuring stick to see what the student's financial need is, and also there are cutoffs for certain eligibility based on that number. Now as far as this stuff down here goes, this is still kind of being discussed, but what we have, and I have been doing this presentation for many years, and I told my boss today I have a little bit of anxiety because there is so much uncertainty with this right now. We are not 100% sure of what's actually going to happen, what's not going to happen, but we have been told that right now the FAFSA does ask for the number of students in the household that are attending college. They are not going to ask for that anymore in the calculation. And currently, if you come from a divorced or separated family, they do ask for the custodial parent information. They are now talking about that they're not going to do that anymore. They're going to look for the parent who provides the most financial support, which in some cases, most cases, is going to be the custodial parent, but in some cases it may not be. So once this is all finalized, there will be releases that will be sent out from the government, from the Department of Education. We'll be sending stuff out to help people. Somebody in the last session asked, like, how do we know if they're being vague about when it's going to open? How will we know when it opens? Once we have concrete information and dates and things like that, we will communicate that to the families, to the students, so that you're all in the loop. But as I said, right now, the simplification of FAFSA is apparently making it much less simpler. So we are in the process of just navigating this wave with all of you. So where does financial aid come from? So as I said, the FAFSA goes out. You are reviewed at the federal level, at the institutional level, and at the state level. So at the institutional level through Arcadia, and this does vary by school, so please note this institutional information is only Arcadia specific. So as I said, we do evaluate every student who is admitted to the university for a merit scholarship. That is at the time of the acceptance. You'll get your acceptance letter. Now it is important to know you will have a figure. That figure will remain consistent. So if you get a $21,000 scholarship coming in as a first year student, it will be $21,000 each year moving forward. We do not bring you in and give you $21,000. I had a parent ask me the other day, and then they're like, does that go down like in the next year or anything like that? It does not. It is not a bait and switch kind of situation. It is consistent. The only thing you have to do to make that renew each year, is remain full-time at Arcadia in good academic standing, and it automatically renews. You do not have to file a FAFSA for that. The other aid on here, you do need to file a FAFSA for. So we do have some specialty grants, if you will. The distance grant is for students who live kind of outside of the immediate area, so outside of like Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, it's kind of like, if I always tell people, think of like if you're from Missouri, you're gonna qualify for a distance grant. If you're from New Jersey, I live in New Jersey, it takes me a half hour to get here, you are not qualifying for a distance grant. Now, with these specialty grants, a lot of times people will say, well, if somebody from Missouri gets that and I'm from Pennsylvania, am I getting like penalized because then I'm not qualifying for that? This is where the financial need comes in. So a student who gets a distance grant has less financial need now than a student who doesn't. So the student who doesn't may qualify for a higher Arcadia grant. So the Arcadia grant is the universal grant that every student is evaluated for when they are evaluated for need-based aid. This is free money from the university. You are reevaluated each year because it is based on certain factors. Obviously, your FAFSA being the first factor, but also your financial need is calculated based on what you're charged from the university. So if you change your housing status or something changes or you go abroad, that is why it is recalculated each year. Is anybody here the child, grandchild, great-grandchild of an Arcadia alum?
I didn't understand.
I had a lot of students this year. I had 2 students who told me they forgot that their parents went to Arcadia, and I was like, don't tell your parents that. So if you do qualify for that, you do need to let us know during the admissions process. Again, this is a specialty grant, so if you don't qualify for this, you're not being penalized. You would just qualify possibly for more Arcadia grant money. The sibling grant, if you have a current sibling who will be attending Arcadia at the same time as you, as I've told the last group, I was the oldest student in my family to go to college. My sister was 2 years younger than me, so we were in college at the same time. She went to Arcadia, I went somewhere else. But if we both were at Arcadia, we would have gotten a distance grant. We have a ton of twins this year. If you're a twin, luckily you get that distance grant as well. But again, if you don't qualify for these, please don't think that you're missing out on anything. Again, your need would be higher for the Arcadia grant. So as far as federal financial aid goes, this is money from the government. This is the money Uncle Sam is giving you to attend college. There are certain most federal aid is pretty universal between like schools. So when you get your aid offer from Arcadia, you get your aid offer from somewhere else, a lot of things are gonna match up and be consistent. Some things are not though. The federal Pell Grant is one that will be across the board consistent because that is based off of currently the EFC will be based off of the Student Aid Index when they rename it. As far as that goes, the way that that works is that currently if a student has an EFC of 0, they qualify for the maximum Pell Award for this year, which is $7,395. Then what the government does each year is they have a cutoff. So they'll say if your EFC, which they just changed, so I apologize, I don't have it memorized, is this higher than this cutoff, you are not eligible for a Pell Grant. But they will go then from the cutoff to 0 on a sliding scale, so 0 gets the most Pell Grant money, and then as you get closer and closer to the cutoff, you will get a lower and lower amount of Pell Grant money. Because Pell Grant is calculated off of the FAFSA, the amount will be consistent between schools. So that's not like a financial need thing, that is directly tied to the FAFSA. We do not award Pell. I've had people who've asked me like, can I appeal my Pell Grant? And I'm like, I guess you can write to the White House, like I don't know, but we cannot change it. So as far as that goes. Now, parents, I'm sure how many of you have heard of the federal Stafford loans in your lifetime? You may be survivors of the Stafford loans. Again, the government gets really bored every so often. They actually renamed the Stafford loans and they are now called the federal direct loans. I highlight this because I had a parent who I sat down with and she was very concerned as to why the government didn't give her daughter Stafford loans, and I said they did, they just disguised them to confuse you. So these are the Stafford loans, formerly known as the Stafford loans. They are now called the federal direct loans. Every student who files a FAFSA is automatically eligible to borrow these loans. So they are in the student's name. There's no credit check associated with them. The amount of the loan is based on the student's year in school. So a freshman is eligible to borrow a $3,500 loan. A sophomore is $4,500, and a junior and a senior is $5,500. Now that amount can have the opportunity to either be subsidized or unsubsidized. Subsidized means that the amount does not accrue interest while the student is in school. Unsubsidized means that it does. Now, that is calculated using a math problem based on the cost of the school, your financial need, the other aid, all of that kind of stuff. So subsidy may vary from school to school, depending upon the cost of the school. So if a school is cheaper, you may not qualify for subsidy. School is more expensive, you may qualify for subsidy versus like if you have multiple aid offers. The really good thing about subsidy is that it's not like an all or nothing kind of thing because it is a math problem. So you could qualify for a portion of the $3,500 to be subsidized versus nothing at all. So that could vary from school to school, but it will always be $3,500. In addition to that amount, the government, in their ultimate generosity, allows every student to borrow an additional $2,000 loan. So it will be 35 and 2, 45 and 2, 55 and 2, in addition to that loan. Now that $2,000 will always be $2,000 and it will always be unsubsidized, so it will always accrue interest while the student is in school. Now what they do with the interest rates is that this is what's called, they do a variable fixed rate. So what that means is that the summer of every year going into the new school year, the government resets the interest rate. They have until July 1st to do this. Some years it's very easy. We have a rate pretty early. Some years you'll see them on CNN fighting with each other. So we have no insight. I will get calls, I will get emails from parents and they will say like, is it like a pattern? Does it go up? Does it go down? To be very honest with you, I think they spin a wheel and throw a dart at the wheel and then pick a different number from what it hits because it's never been any kind of consistent pattern. So you actually don't have to accept these loans until the summer anyway. So if you feel comfortable waiting until you feel more comfortable waiting until you know what the interest rate on the loans are, you can do that. We don't process the loans until the summer, so you have time. As far as these interest rates go though, usually they are much lower than the other loan options out there. So a lot of times people know, I'm taking them anyway, I'm just gonna move forward with it, and once I find out the interest rate, I'll find out the interest rate. Because these are in the students' names, they are automatically deferred payments until 6 months after graduation. So students, you'll get a very lovely Thanksgiving present from the government about repaying your loans. Before you graduate, we do exit counseling, so students are really kind of prepared to set up those repayments. Typically, it would be a 10-year repayment option for students, but if you do have unsubsidized loans that are kind of gaining interest while you're in school and you want to work with your lender to pay on the interest while you're in school, you do have the option to do that as well, but it is an automatic 6-month grace period after you graduate. Now, this federal aid is awarded to schools from the government kind of based on the size of the school. So each school has a different pot that they're pulling from. So this could look different between schools, but it is still federal aid. So the federal SEOG grant is a federal grant that is awarded based off of the FAFSA information. At Arcadia, in order to qualify, a student does need to be Pell Grant eligible. Because we do have limited funding, it typically is about a $1,000 grant that a student would receive. Again, if you don't receive SEOG, your need is just higher, and then obviously you have an Arcadia grant that you would receive in that place. Work study, I am sure that you have seen our lovely ambassadors today in their lovely red shirts. That is a work study position. Work study is a federally funded program, so it is awarded based on your financial need on your FAFSA. As far as work study goes, when you get your aid offer, it will show all of the aid plus your scholarship that you qualify for, and it will show an estimated out-of-pocket cost on there. Work study is awarded as a part of financial aid, but it is not deducted from tuition, so it is not factored into the out-of-pocket cost. So if a student takes a work study job, they are paid for the hours that they work. If a student does not take a work study job, you're just not paid. It is literally no different from if you're in high school right now and you go out and get a job and you get a paycheck versus maybe your friend doesn't have a job and they don't have a paycheck. So it doesn't change what your family owes to the university, it's just whether or not you're earning money while you're here. Now, as far as this goes, our students are offered a variety of jobs. So we award work study eligibility from the FAFSA, but we do have an Office of Career Education on campus and they coordinate the work study program. So the way that the process works is that over the summer, once a student commits to the university, the summer before your freshman year, You'll work with Career Education. They'll send out emails about Handshake, which is our online application portal. It'll have all the job descriptions, all the listings. I like that because I know sometimes like you don't want to like talk to somebody and then be like, oh, I don't really like that job, and now I talk to them. It's nice to be able to kind of go through those listings, apply, and then if you do decide to take a work study job and you have a placement, the Office of Career Education will work with students during orientation to give them their placement information, your supervisor information, and as I said, you are paid for the hours that you work. This is not a one and done kind of situation. So like for example, I've talked to some students who are coming in and they say, you know what, I kind of just want to make sure that like it's something I can handle. I don't want to commit to something my freshman year. Just because you said no your freshman year, we're not going to be like, oh my God, they never want it again. We will review you each year. Again, this is why you reapply for aid each year, because your thoughts and what your needs could change. Also with work study, you can set up, most of our students do have direct deposit, so it would just go right into your bank account. As I said, it doesn't go into your tuition account or anything like that when you do get paid. So some other types of aid, how many of you are from Pennsylvania? Show of hands. Oh, okay. How many of you are from New Jersey? Other states? Okay, what states? Maryland? Delaware, okay. Delaware will let some state aid cross bridges. New Jersey, not so much. Pennsylvania, also not so much out of Pennsylvania. So state grants, so even though we are a private school, there is a Pennsylvania state grant. Maryland, I'm not 100% sure about. You guys would have to check that on their website as to what can come in and come out. But this, they actually, so each state uses the FAFSA as the application for state aid. So each state has a deadline. I can tell you Pennsylvania's is May 1st. Each year you have to file your FAFSA by May 1st. This is the state. They are dealing with the entire state. They are not us where we have priority deadlines and oh, you missed it, it's okay, we'll work on this. This is an actual deadline. They don't really want to give this money away. Obviously, they're not going to be like making exceptions if you miss a deadline. So when you do your FAFSA, they will get the information. If the student needs to do additional information, the Pennsylvania State, I'll use them as my example, the Pennsylvania State Grant Office, their office will reach out directly to the student. And they may say to the student, hey, this is FIA, that's their name. We're just looking for some additional information. Can you fill out this form? Can you do this? Do what they're asking you to do as soon as possible, because again, they're working with the whole state. So they're getting a lot of information in. It takes a little bit of time to process. So you want to make sure that you're doing what they're asking for you to do. It is based on your income and your financial need. So like the Pell Grant, they do have a cutoff each year for the EFC, soon to be the SAI, so that if you're above that, you won't qualify for a grant, but if you're below that, you do. So as far as that goes, that is why the FAFSA is also really important to see what you qualify for. As I said, Pennsylvania students attending a Pennsylvania college can use the state grant. If you're going outside of Pennsylvania, they do let limited funding go across. New Jersey, again, you would have higher needs, so that's where the Arcadia grant would come into play. But definitely you want to make sure you're keeping up on your state, you know what their deadline is and what their rules are. As far as outside sources of aid, there are a lot of outside scholarship opportunities out there. I work with all of our students with outside scholarships. I know some of you came in at this part. When I was looking at colleges, I was the oldest in my family, so my parents were like, oh my gosh, our beacon of light, like you're the best student in all of America. You are gonna win this Coca-Cola scholarship, I know it. Still shoot for the stars. Yes, the Coca-Cola scholarship, you might be that 1 in a million student, but there also are a million other 1 in a millions out there. So yes, still do the databases, still do the national listings and all that kind of stuff, but also think local. Talk with your guidance office. If the student has an employer, if a student has an after-school job, there are a lot of employers that do have scholarship opportunities. Talk with them. My sister was 2 years younger than me. By the time she got to college, my dad figured out his company had a scholarship. And I was like, well, that was nice of you to find out 2 years later. So talk to parent employers. You never know. As long as your outside scholarship added to your Arcadia scholarship doesn't exceed the cost of our tuition, we simply add it onto your aid offer and subtract it from your overall cost. So as far as that goes, as long as you're not, if you're one of the 1 in a millions who are winning the full ride, I've had one in my whole time here. I will like high five you and throw confetti on you. but most students are winning about like $1,000 here and there. It's not really kind of like a ton of money that students are winning. And go for all of them. I had a student who won like, I think about 10 different scholarships, and she kept emailing me and being like, I'm so sorry, I have another one. And I was like, what are you talking about? By the time I added them up, I was like, you have like $5,000 that now you don't have to pay for. Like, that's awesome. So please, 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 I had a student this year who won a local organization. She won $10,000, and she emailed me and she's like, is this a scam? And I was like, well, wait, did you not apply? I was like, then I was like, wait, no, the organization had contacted me. I'm like, did you not apply? Like, I'm very confused. She's like, no, I just never thought something like this would happen to me. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, we are all very happy for you. So definitely, just once you know, if you want anything, just let us know, and then we can kind of take it from there. So as far as the process goes, as I mentioned, admission applications do start being reviewed usually in mid to late September. The Common App opens August 1st. As far as the FAFSA goes, you can complete the FAFSA now that the deadline's kind of pushed back a little bit to December. Most people will have already applied to the schools, but if you want to apply for FAFSA prior to applying to schools, you don't have to be admitted to the university to submit a FAFSA. Basically what happens is if you submit a FAFSA before you're admitted, it'll just come through and sit in the holding pen and wait until you're admitted, and then the two records will link up. Little PSA, the Common App will ask for your social security number. That is how the two records link up. If you leave your social security number off of your Common App, it does take a little bit longer for us to kind of figure out who is missing what. We do have a process that does do a sweep for them, but it does take a little bit of time. So please, please, please make sure that you are doing that when you are submitting your Common Application. In order to be reviewed for financial aid, students do need to be admitted to the university and have a FAFSA on file. As far as that goes, once we start reviewing for aid, our current timeline is that it opens on October 1st. We start reviewing new students usually in mid-December, and then we do it on a rolling basis. Now, obviously, we will have to adjust that if the FAFSA is not opening for you all to fill it out until December. But we are aware of that, and we are going to try to really ramp it up to get them out as fast as possible when we get the information. But moving forward, as I said, I'm pretty sure once they figure this year out, it'll probably go back to the October 1st deadline. So in future years, returning students, though, do have a pushed back deadline. We actually will start reviewing them for aid now, because new students, you're all blank slates. I tell my returning students, y'all have baggage. So we have to check their academic progress. We have to check their grades. They're like, oh, do you just do the new students first because like they're new students? And I'm like, no, it's not like we like them better than you. It's that we have things for you that we have to actually check, and they don't have those things. And then once your aid offer is available, you will be notified via email that you can view it on the financial aid portal. You can create a portal account at that time. We'll give you instructions on how to do it. Also, a paper copy of the aid offer will be mailed out to you in a red envelope. I like the paper copy better because we do the math for you on there with your out-of-pocket costs. On the portal, you have to actually do subtraction. I always tell my financial aid students, I'm like, let us do the work for you. We'll get it, but you can do the subtraction yourself as well. And you can contact our office if you have any questions. As I said, once you get your aid information, you'll get your financial aid counselor's information, and we are here to help. Our general information's up here, but if anybody has any questions right now, I'm happy to answer them. Yes?
Would outside aid affect the grants or scholarships that you might receive from Arcadia?
Typically no, because it's not usually a ton of money. So typically it would be more of the scholarship. So as long as the outside scholarship added to the Arcadia scholarship doesn't exceed the cost of tuition, we just add it right on. Now again, like if we had a student who was bringing in like really close to the limit or something like that, we may have to say like, you know what, there are kind of limits that students can do for like aid because the government puts those in place to protect the students. So I've actually had students where I've said like, hey, I'm gonna take your loans off, like we'll replace the loans because you want an outside scholarship. I will always replace loans first. And most people don't complain about that when I give them. I had a student who was like, thank you, and I was like, okay, we're good. Yes?
What's the max merit scholarship award?
Currently, right now, it's $28,000. We do reevaluate those each year. So for this school year, it is $20,000. Any other questions? And I always joke around with students because I'm like, when you're looking at our cost and it's like $62,000, you're like, yes, $28,000 is so much money. And then you look and you're like, 62 minus 28 is still a really high number. That's where the kind of second part really does come in. And I can tell you, like, I work with admissions and financial aid, and I've actually been pleasantly surprised. Like, I always feel like sometimes like schools are like just like reiterating, like, I know it's all gonna like even out. I've actually had a lot of students in the past couple years, especially, who like they have state school offers and us, and we actually come in cheaper because of institutional aid and different things like that. So that's why I always tell people, like, go through the whole process. Like, don't write things off just because you look at it and say like, it's not going to work out. You don't know that until you try. So definitely don't write anything off or anything like that until you see the actual information. And then once you see the actual information, we have financial aid appeals process. Like, we have things that we can work with families on. And with the pandemic, I always like to also mention, we also have a process in place. Like, if a family has, the FAFSA is going to ask for 2-year out income. And we always used to, like, again, before the pandemic, make jokes like, oh, I mean, hey, your life might be different 2 years from now. Yeah, everybody's life is different 2 years from now. So we also have processes in place for that as well. So definitely, I can only speak to Arcadia, like, reach out to schools, like, if you had like a parent lose a job, or like I'm putting 21 information on there, but in 23, only one of my parents is employed, or my parent retired or something like that. We have processes in place that we can work with you on that. A lot of things happen when the world turned upside down, and we're like, it's like all the outliers, and people will call and be like, oh, I have a unique situation, and it's like, actually, we have a whole process in place for your unique situation, so please know it is not just you. Does anybody else have any other questions? All right, well, this is kind of the last session. If anybody needs a campus tour, you can head over to the Commons.